Okay, here we're going to take a look at completing a worksheet. And what we have already here is the heading, ABC Company Worksheet, and the date, or the range date. Here we're telling that it's for the month ended April 30th of 11. On the left I have all of my accounts that have a balance in the general ledger, and they're listed along with their balances in the first two columns, which is the trial balance column. And of course that has to balance before I can move on with the rest of the worksheet. And here they balance at $35 on each, the debit and the credit columns. So now I can go forward with doing my adjustments. The first adjustment that we're going to work on is supplies. And we're told that $1 is in supplies on hand once we counted up the supplies in the cabinet. Okay, so here we have supplies, and there is right now $4 in the supplies books, the asset called supplies. Now I have to figure out, well, how much have I used? Well, what I'm told is that there in reality is $1 in the cabinet. My books need to match the reality, and so in other words, I need for my balance to be $1 so it matches reality. So how much have I used? Well, I had $4 in there, now I have $1. So 4 minus 1, I must have used $3, and so $3, the part that I used, is going to go to an expense account, because of course using something is the key word for expenses. So I'm going to use supplies expense. And that $3 is going in there. Okay, so now I know what I'm going to do, and I'm going to have then a little letter A and $3 on the credit of supplies, and then I need a debit of $3 for supplies expense. Now there is no supplies expense, and so I just simply go down here to the bottom and write it in. And put my little letter A and my $3 for supplies expense debit. The next thing we're told is that the insurance policy in prepaid insurance is good. It was for 6 months. So here I have prepaid insurance, and there's $6 in it, and I know that has is for 6 months. So if I take $6 and divide it by 6 months, then I see that I used $1 for 1 month. Okay, so $1 needs to come out of here. I no longer own that $1. I have used that $1. So it needs to come out of the asset. And I'm going to put that in insurance expense. Okay, so here I need to credit prepaid insurance. So I put my little letter B and $1 in there, and I need to debit insurance expense. Okay, I don't have an insurance expense, so once again, I just add it to the bottom here. Letter B and my dollar. Okay, next we're told that depreciation is $1 per month. Okay, so depreciation, I don't really need to calculate it because they're already telling me how much it is. So I just need to know what to debit and what to credit. So when I have depreciation, I'm going to debit depreciation expense. I don't have one, so I'm going to add it down here. Okay, and a little letter C and my dollar, and I need to credit accumulated depreciation dash equipment, which is up here. That's my contra account, little letter C and a dollar on the credit side there. Finally, I'm told that there's accrued wages. Wages where we've used the employees, but we haven't paid them yet. But it's where we've used them in the month of April. And so they need to go in the April's books as April wages expense. And so here I'm going to debit wages expense for $1. So I put my little letter D and $1. And I'm not actually paying out cash for the wages today, but I would owe those wages if the company closed up for today, then I would owe them. So I'm going to start an account called wages payable and put the dollar credit in there. I owe out to the employees that $1. Okay, so there are my 4 adjustments, and now I can total up each debit and credit column. So I have 6 here in the debits and 6 here in the credits. So my debits equal my credits, so I'm good to go. If they didn't balance, then my mistake would be right here in the adjustments column. I wouldn't have to go looking in my general ledgers. Somehow I made a mistake and it's right in front of my face. Now I've got the adjusted trial balance columns, and I have to go by row. So cash is $2 debit, and there's no adjustment, so it comes across as $2 debit. Accounts receivable is $4 debit, no adjustment, comes across as $4 debit. Supplies has a $4 debit, but then there is a $3 credit. And so we use our old rule of thumb, debit and debit is add, credit and credit is add, but debit and credit is subtract. So here I have a debit and a credit. 4 minus 3 then is 1. And of course, this 1 says that's how much I have in supplies. Okay, here's my balance of supplies. That's what it's supposed to be. Okay, prepaid insurance is 6 debit and a 1 credit. So again, I'm going to subtract 6 minus 1 is 5. Equipment is 12 and there's no adjustment. Here I have for accumulated depreciation a 2 credit, and then there's an adjustment that's a 1 credit. Credit and credit is add. 2 plus 1 is 3. Accounts payable is a 7 credit, no changes. Wages payable is a 0 credit and a 1 credit. So 0 and 1 is 1. Capital is 11, no changes. Drawing is 1 debit, no changes. Sales is 15 credit, no changes. Wages is a 3 debit and a 1 debit. Debit and debit is add. 3 plus 1 is 4. I rent still stays at 2 debit, utilities at 1 debit. Now the rest of these don't have anything in trial balance, but they have one in adjustments, and so I just copy them down. You just have to be real careful to notice whether these are debits or credits. These are all debits, 3, 1, and 1. Okay? Now I'm going to add these 2 columns up and make sure that my debits equal my credits again. Okay? And I add this first column up and it's 38. And I add this other column up and it's 38. Okay, so I'm good to go. Now, I simply put the numbers from the adjusted trial balance into either the income statement or the balance sheet columns. And as we had discussed, the income statement columns is revenues and expenses only. The balance sheet columns will be everything else. So I start with my revenues and expenses. That starts with sales as my revenues, so I put that in the income statement columns. And if it's a credit, it stays a credit. If it's a debit, it stays a debit. So there's my revenue. And then all of these from the 4 down to this 1 here, these are all expenses. And so I'm going to put all of those in the income statement columns too. Put them exactly the way they are. The adjusted trial balance. There we go. Now all other numbers, so that's from cash all the way down to drawing, is going to go in the balance sheet. And again, just exactly the same way they are on the adjusted trial balance. All right, now I'm going to total up these 4 columns, and I know, of course, that they're not going to equal each other. Okay, 6, 7. This equals 13. And that equals 15. This equals 25. Equals 23. Okay, nope. Needing a math error here. 12. This one equals 22. Okay. Now I got to see what the difference are between the debit and credit columns of the income statement. Take the large number minus the small number. 15 minus 12 is 3. And so this will now add up to 15. This 15 and 0 is 15. Then I look the large number of the balance sheet minus the small number. 25 minus 22 is 3. And I add these up. So that they equal. Then I check, does this 3 equal that 3? Yes, it does. I come across here and I put net income. And I'm good to go, and I'm ready to use this worksheet to make my adjusting entries. I'm going to make an adjusting entry for all of these entries in the adjustment column. I can make my financial statements from the income statement and balance sheet columns, And I can make my closing entries also, all from this worksheet. It's ready to go.